but just one room, and he didn't have a bed. So he and my mom came up to my grandmother's house, and he and my mother carried out the bed she and I had been sleeping in and took it down to his house. My grandmother wasn't home when they came for the bed, or maybe she wouldn't have let them take it. When they were carrying the bed, I followed them out to the road, but my mother said, "You stay here, Juan," so I went back to the house. Once they were gone, I didn't know what to do, so I just hung around all day until my grandmother came home and went up to her and pulled her into the room where our bed used to be. My grandmother frowned. "So now you have no bed?" she said. I started to cry. It's bad enough not having a father and a mother, but when you don't even have a place to sleep, it's worse. When I stopped crying, I asked my grandmother if I could sleep with her at night, but she said no. "I have to work too hard," she said. "I need my rest. I have had enough sleeping with children. Children kick," she said. "I won't kick," I said. "You say you won't, but in your sleep you would," my grandmother said. She could see I was going to cry again. "But just a minute," she said. "We'll fix something up for you." And she looked around and found a bunch of empty rice bags and put them on the floor by her bed and gave me a blanket off her bed. She got everything all ready for me before dinner, about 5 in the afternoon. I guess she knew I was worried that I didn't have a place where I belonged anymore. And if I at least had a place to sleep, I wouldn't be so scared. When she told me, "Well, grandson, you can stay here, but you know the rule about the gate. You have to obey the rule about the gate, you know." I nodded and said, "Yes, Grandma." My grandmother's house has a high fence around it, and a wooden gate with a lock on it that my grandmother locks every night. The only ones besides her who have keys are my uncles. Everyone else has to be in by 8:30. After that, my grandmother won't get up to let them in. No matter how hard anyone knocks, she just shuts her ears. And she won't let anyone else go open the gate either. I told my grandmother I understood about the gate. But since I was little, maybe I didn't exactly understand. Once my mother was gone, I started going walking alone after dinner. I didn't really belong to anyone, so I did whatever I wanted. One night, a few days after my mother left, I went for a really long walk, all the way to the lake. By the time I got back to my grandmother's house, it had been dark a long time, and the gate was locked. I didn't know what to do, and I was cold besides. I just had shorts and a t-shirt on, and even though San Pablo is hot during the day, it gets cold at night because we're so high up in the mountains. The only thing I could think of to do was to look for my mother. I knew where my stepfather's house was, so I decided to go there. When I got there, through the window I saw a candle burning. Nobody ever goes to sleep or goes outside leaving a candle burning because it could burn up everything in the house. So I knew somebody was awake and inside. I wasn't tall enough to see who, so I put a rock below the window and stood on it to look in. I saw my mother alone. I knocked once, so softly she didn't hear me, and then once again louder. My mother opened the door a crack and saw me. All she said was, "You." Of course, my mother knew the rule about the gate and how late it was, and how I must have got locked out. She stood for a minute in the doorway, and then she said, "Come on in."